If you feel like sharing, tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is where you are. I mean it. I picture you out there, someone in a kitchen with the kettle singing, someone driving with the radio low, someone lying awake with thoughts that won't let go. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It helps me more than you know. It tells the world that women like me aren't invisible. Not anymore. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I am 78 years old. And I am going to say this first. Plain as bread on the table. I was not confused. I was not slipping. I did not forget again. I knew exactly what it meant when I woke up in the dark and my bedroom door would not open. I knew exactly what it meant when I called for help and the house swallowed my voice like a sink swallowing water. And I knew exactly what it meant when my own daughter-in-law smiled at strangers and said I had dementia. If that single word could turn me into a child, a liar, a thing that could be managed. People think old age arrives like a blanket, soft and quiet. No, sometimes it arrives like a tag pinned to your chest by someone else. Sometimes it arrives as a sentence spoken over you while you're still alive. And the most frightening part is not the tag. It's watching people believe it. It started with grief. Like so many disasters do. Grief is a fog. It makes you reach for warmth wherever you can find it. It makes you open doors you should keep latched. My son, Raymond, died in late spring. When the trees were loud with leaves and the world was pretending nothing bad could happen. He was 40, not a boy, not an old man. Just, here one moment, gone the next. A sudden collapse at work. That's what they told me. As if a whole life can be reduced to a sentence and a shrug. 4 weeks after the funeral, I kept doing the foolish little rituals that don't look foolish until you catch yourself doing them. Folding shirts that would never be worn again, leaving the porch light on, setting an extra fork by mistake and then staring at it like it might accuse you. I would sit at my kitchen table, oak, scarred with years, the kind Frank and I used to joke could survive a tornado, and I'd listen to the refrigerator hum and think, if I sit very still, maybe the world will rewind. It did not. That's when Janelle came. That's what I'll call her, because even saying her real name out loud still tastes like metal in my mouth. She showed up one afternoon with mascara streaked down her cheeks and a suitcase rolling behind her like a loyal dog. She stood on my porch as if she belonged there, and in a way, she did. She had been my son's wife for 15 years. She had sat at my table on holidays. She had smiled in photos. She had called me Mama E and hugged me a little too tight. I can't stay in our apartment, she said, voice thin and trembling. Everything is. Him, the couch, the bed, the shower curtain. I can't breathe in there. I believed her, because I couldn't breathe either. So I did what grandmothers do when their hearts are sore and their homes are big and their love has nowhere to go. I opened the door and said, "Come in." The first week, she was almost sweet. She cooked dinners I didn't ask for. She washed dishes without clanging them around. She made cornbread like she was trying to bake a memory back into the house. She sat with me on the sofa and watched old movies and laughed in the wrong places. It felt like two wounded animals curled up near the same fire. I remember thinking, maybe this is how we survive. Together. Maybe I'm not meant to do this alone. Grief will do that to you. It will make you call a wolf a blanket. The change didn't come with a crash. It came like a draft you barely notice until you wake up shivering. She started moving things. First, small things you can explain away. My pantry shelf rearranged. My linen closet suddenly half full of her coats. She'd smile and say, "It's just easier this way." And I would nod, because grief made me tired and conflict made me older. Then, one evening in the den, she brought out a manila folder like it was nothing more serious than a recipe. "This is just to make things smoother," she said, tapping the folder with a neat fingernail. "If you ever need me to speak for you at the doctor, or pick up prescriptions, or handle bills. It's basic. Basic. That word. People use it the way they use just and only. Like a pillow over your face." I flipped through pages that looked like spider webs of legal language, lines and boxes and phrases that didn't sound like the way we speak at kitchen tables. She pointed where she wanted me to sign. She spoke softly, like someone comforting a nervous child. "It's not taking anything from you," she said. "It's protecting you." Protecting. Another soft word that can hide sharp teeth. I was 78, yes, but I was not incapable. My mind was steady. I paid my own bills. I knew my neighbors' names. I remembered birthdays. I still read novels without losing the plot. I could tell you what year my husband laid those floorboards down because I watched him do it. Sweat shining on his forehead like he was building a future with his hands. But I was grieving, and grief makes you want someone else to steer for a while. So I signed. I signed because she was family. I signed because I was tired. I signed because I wanted to believe that the woman who cried on my porch was not the woman who would one day lock me in a room. The first time she handed me a paper labeled rent, I actually laughed. I laughed the way you laugh when someone tells a joke that's too absurd to be anything but a joke. Rent, I said, still smiling. In my own house. Her smile didn't move. It's fair, she said, arms folding across her chest. I cover food. Utilities. It's a shared household now. I felt my laughter die like a candle pinched out. Your name is not on this deed, I said, keeping my voice calm, because calm is the language I grew up speaking. This house has been mine since before you and Raymond met. She tipped her head, as if I'd said something charming. That agreement you signed, she said. It gives me authority to manage the residence. Authority. Manage. Residence. She didn't call it home. Not then. I asked to see the papers again. She slid them across the table with a look that said, "Go ahead, embarrass yourself. You already did by signing." I read the lines. I saw words like tenant and caregiver, and primary manager. The room started to feel far away. The air tasted dusty. "This isn't what you told me," I whispered. She shrugged as if truth was optional. "You should have read it." That was the first time I felt something colder than grief. It was the feeling of being hunted inside your own life. After that, it became a game only. I didn't know I was playing at first. She started scolding me like a child. If I left a lamp on in the hallway, she'd click her tongue and say, "Electricity isn't free, you know." If I watered the marigolds on the porch, she'd stare through the window as if watching a thief. Then she started locking things. A little metal box over the thermostat. Budget, she said. A lock on the pantry handle. Rationing, she said. A new rule written on a sticky note on the fridge ask before taking. That note made my stomach turn. Like I was living in a stranger's house. Like I had become a guest who didn't know the rules. I wanted to call someone. I wanted to tell my granddaughter, my only granddaughter, Imani, but Imani was 21 and busy and bright and already carrying the weight of her mother's temper. I didn't want to become another burden in her life. I didn't want to make her choose. So I did what older women have been trained to do for generations. I got quiet. I tried to shrink without disappearing. I told myself, it's grief. She's grieving too. She's just spiraling. But grief doesn't install locks. Grief doesn't write invoices. Grief doesn't practice a lie in the mirror until it sounds like truth. The first time she locked my bedroom door from the outside, it was late. I woke up to use the bathroom. Half asleep, feet cold against the floor. I reached for the knob and it turned, but the door didn't open. At first I thought it was swollen wood. Old houses do that when the air is damp. I pressed my shoulder against it. I jiggled the handle. Nothing. Then I noticed the latch position through the little gap flipped on the outside. My blood ran cold. I whispered her name. Louder than I knocked. Then I banged once. Hard enough to sting my palm. No answer. The house listened and said nothing back. I stood there in my nightgown, barefoot, with my heart trying to climb out of my throat. I had a phone by my bed, thank God she hadn't taken it yet, and my fingers shook so badly I hit the wrong numbers twice. When I finally got emergency services, my voice came out too small. "I can't open my bedroom door," I said. "It's locked. From the outside." The dispatcher asked questions in that flat, professional way that makes you feel foolish even when you're terrified. "Are you injured? Are you in immediate danger? Can you confirm your address?" I answered. I waited. When the police arrived, their flashlights cut through my curtains like lightning. I heard the knock on the door from the hallway, gentle, almost apologetic. "Ma'am, are you okay in there?" "I'm here," I said, voice cracking, "but I can't get out." Metal scraped metal. A click. The door opened. A young officer stepped in, eyes soft, looking at me the way you look at someone you assume is fragile. "You live alone?" he asked. "No," I said. "My daughter-in-law lives here." I heard the front door open. Footsteps. Her voice floated down the hall. Syrupsweet.com, as a Sunday morning. "Officers, I'm so sorry," she said. "I just got back." "What's going on?" She appeared in the hallway in a robe like a costume. Hair neat, face composed to composed. She said she was locked in. The officer explained. Janelle's eyes widened. And then she sighed with a sad little smile. Like this was a familiar inconvenience. "Oh, Evelyn," she said softly. "Did you forget again?" "Forget." That word landed on me like a stone. "Forget what?" I asked, heat rising in my face. She turned to the officers, voice gentle, embarrassed for me. "She has early dementia," she said. "We've been dealing with it. Sometimes she thinks I'm locking her in or keeping things from her. That lock is for her safety. She wanders. Wanders. My mouth opened. No sound came out. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, do you have a diagnosis? No, I said quickly. I'm fine. I'm not. Janelle laughed softly, sweet as pie. She doesn't remember the visit. It's okay. This happens. She pulled the folder from a drawer like she'd been waiting for this moment, like she'd rehearsed this part. She handed papers over and watched them skim. The officer's shoulders relaxed. A nod. A look that said, ah, that explains it. And just like that, I became a story they already knew. Old woman. Confused caregiver present. Case closed. When they left, the house went still. Janelle closed the door gently, then turned toward me, and the sweetness fell away like a mask dropped on the floor. You embarrassed me, she said. You locked me in, I whispered. Her eyes narrowed. Be careful, she said quietly. You want them to take you in for an evaluation. You want strangers medicating you and wheeling you around like furniture. I stepped back. My knees felt weak. She leaned closer, voice low, sharp. Pull a stunt like that again and I'll tell them you've been wandering, that you talked to yourself, that you tried to hit me. Who do you think they'll believe? I looked at her, truly looked, and something inside me shifted. It wasn't fear, it was recognition. This wasn't a grieving widow losing her way. This was a predator. I went back into my room and closed my door. She didn't lock it then. She didn't have to. The threat was the lock. That night, I slept with the lamp on and the curtains open, like light itself could protect me in the morning. The pantry was locked tighter. My coffee tin was gone. A sticky note on the fridge said, ask first. I started doing something I never thought I would do in my own home. I started hiding food. A granola bar slid into my sweater pocket, another tucked into a drawer, a bottle of water pushed under the bed like a secret. That is what humiliation looks like, by the way. Not a dramatic scene, not shouting. Humiliation is a grandmother hiding snacks in a place she used to hide Christmas gifts. Over the next days, I listened harder. I moved quieter. I stopped challenging her because every challenge became a weapon. She could swing back at me with that word dementia. I heard her on the phone once, laughing. She's slipping more, she said, voice bright. Next time she acts out, I'll get her evaluated. She said it like she was planning a dentist appointment. I stood behind my door with my hand over my mouth, not to stop myself from speaking but to stop myself from making noise because I finally understood the shape of the cage. Then came the trip. She strutted in one evening humming, dressed too nicely for the grocery store, nails fresh, hair done, the click of her heels loud like a warning. Chicago, she announced, pouring herself wine. 5 days, maybe less. My stomach tightened. You'll be gone, I said slowly. She sipped, shrugged. You'll be fine. I tried to keep my voice even. Can I have a spare key? Just in case. She turned away from me, rinsing the glass. You won't need it. Please, I said. If something happens if I fall, you'll be fine. She repeated, sharper this time, and that was the end of the conversation. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the dark, listening to her pack, zippers and drawers. The sound of someone preparing to leave without caring what remains behind. When I woke up the next morning, my throat was dry, the glass of water by my bed empty. I stood, walked to the door, turned the knob, it turned. But the door did not open, locked. From the outside, the cold panic arrived. Slow and spreading, like ink in water. I knocked once, twice, called her name, pressed my ear to the wood, silence. I shuffled to the window. Her car was gone. She had left, and she had left me sealed inside a room, like an object she didn't want to deal with until she got back. At first I didn't scream. I didn't bang until my hands bled. I sat down and took inventory the way women like me do, in emergencies. Half a bottle of water under the bed. 2 granola bars. A banana already turning, soft. That's what my life was. Reduced to in the house I paid off with decades of work. I told myself, 5 days. I can survive 5 days. But time behaves strangely when you're trapped. Hours stretch like taffy. The air gets thick. Your thoughts start circling like birds that can't find a place to land. I rationed water in sips so small they felt like cruel jokes. I ate half a bar and forced myself to stop, even when my stomach cramped with hunger. I lay down, then sat up, then lay down again, trying to conserve energy by the second night. My mouth was so dry my tongue felt like cloth. My joints ached. A dizziness bloomed behind my eyes. The banana turned black. The last of the water disappeared in my throat like it had never existed. I remember whispering prayers half to God, half to my dead son. because desperation doesn't care who it talks to. Raymond, I whispered, forehead against the floor. If you can hear me, please. My skin felt too hot. My heart beat too fast. The ceiling swam. At some point, I stopped knowing where I was in time. I remember thinking the window light looked wrong. I remember thinking the room had shrunk. I remember pressing my cheek to the floor because it felt cooler there than dark. When I came back to awareness, it was not like waking from sleep. It was like surfacing from deep water with lungs full of salt. I heard voices, a girl's voice, close and familiar, cracking around the edges. Hello, Grandma. I am Ani. My granddaughter. My body tried to respond and failed. My lips wouldn't shape words. My eyelids felt glued down. I heard another voicemail, nervous. Babe, this door is locked. Imani's voice sharpened. That's Grandma's room. She never locks her door. A pause, then the rattle of keys. Light poured in. Footsteps rushed. A gasp so sharp it sounded like pain. Oh my God. I felt hands on my shoulders. Warm hands. Shaking hands. Grandma, look at me, please. I wanted to lift my head, to tell her I was here, that I hadn't been confused, that I hadn't forgotten, that I had been trapped like an animal. But my body was a heavy thing, far away from me. Call 911, I heard her say, voice breaking. Now. Tell them, she's barely responsive. Tell them she was locked in. I felt her tears land on my skin, hot drops. I'm here, she whispered over and over, like a spell. I've got you. Sirens arrived as if from another universe, distant at first, then closer, growing louder until they filled the house. The paramedics moved fast. Professional voices clipped but not unkind. Oxygen hissed. A mask pressed to my face. Cool air entered my lungs like mercy. As they lifted me, the movement made my stomach roll, but the pain didn't matter. What mattered was this. I was no longer alone in the dark. Imani walked beside the stretcher, her face pale and furious, holding my hand like she could anchor me to life. At the hospital, the light was harsh and white, the kind of light that makes everything look guilty. Machines beeped, needles stung, fluids flowed into me like rain into dry earth. Slowly, the fog in my mind began to thin, not because I'd been confused, but because my body was being pulled back from the edge. I heard the doctor say words like severe dehydration and organ strain in another day, and then the sentence stopped because people don't like finishing that sentence in front of families. Imani didn't leave. Not once. She sat in the chair by my bed like a guard dog with a human heart. When I finally managed a whisper, it was her name, Imani. Her head snapped up so fast it startled me. I'm here, she breathed, rushing to my side. I'm right here. I stared at her. Her face was older than the last time I truly looked at it. Not just age, weight. The weight of being raised under a mother who controls a room by controlling everyone's breath. You found me, I rasped. Her jaw clenched. I came to check on my mom, she said, and the word mom tasted bitter in her mouth. She wasn't answering. The house was quiet. Malik needed the bathroom. He tried the door. It was locked. And she swallowed hard. I remembered. You said once your door got stuck. You said the police came. And I didn't ask enough questions then. No, I whispered. She fooled everyone. Imani's eyes went wet again, but her voice was steady. She won't anymore. That's when the detective came. A woman with calm eyes and a clipboard, moving like someone who has seen too many quiet horrors. She spoke gently, but her questions were sharp. Mrs. Brooks, she said, were you locked in your room without access to food or water? I nodded. Did this happen before? I swallowed, throat raw. Yes, I told her about the first time, about the police, about the dementia lie, about how the word had turned me into a ghost in my own hallway. Imani pulled out her phone and showed notes, the pantry latch, the empty bottles, the way the room looked when she found me. Evidence is a strange thing. It's like proof of your own reality. When someone has been making you question your mind, evidence feels like a hand reaching down into water and pulling you out. The detective wrote steadily, expression tightening as the picture formed. We're opening a full investigation, she said. This is not an accident. Later, 2 more officers came, serious, faces set. Elder abuse. Unlawful confinement. Criminal. Imani asked if her mother would be arrested. The officer said, we'll find her. They found her faster than I expected. I didn't see it. I didn't have to. I only heard, days later, that she had been picked up at a terminal, bags packed. looking irritated rather than ashamed, like she couldn't believe the world dared to stop her. When the detective returned, she carried more than my case. She carried history. "We found a previous complaint," she said carefully. "An elderly relative, similar pattern." My stomach turned. She did this before. The detective's mouth tightened. "Yes. And this time, someone lived long enough to speak." That sentence is a knife and a blessing at the same time, because it means others didn't make it, and it means I did. News traveled the way it always does in small communities, fast, hungry. A local channel ran a short segment. Reporters called the hospital. A nurse had to stand outside my door for 2 nights because people love a story, even when it comes from someone else's pain. I didn't want attention. I wanted air. I wanted my home back. I wanted the lie to stop living in my name. 2 weeks later, they wheeled me out to the car. The morning air felt sharp, like it could cut through the last of the fog. My body was weak, yes, but my mind was steady. Imani drove me home. When we pulled up, the house looked the same and different at once. Same porch steps, same siding, same tree out front that had watched me grow old, but the shadows felt thinner. The locks were gone. The pantry stood open. The thermostat was free. The kitchen table held flowers and a new set of keys that belonged only to me. And my bedroom door. It stood open, wide, harmless, like it had never been a cage. I sat on the edge of my bed and exhaled a breath I felt like I had been holding for months. Imani came in with tea, and when she sat across from me, her posture told me she had made a decision. "I'm staying," she said softly. "I'm moving in. I transferred classes. I'm not leaving you alone here." I shook my head slowly. "You don't have to give up your life for me." "I'm not," she said, and her voice steadied. "I'm choosing a better one." That's how healing starts sometimes. Not with grand speeches, with a young woman choosing something different than what raised her. In the weeks that followed, there were interviews, statements, paperwork. I signed documents again, this time with a lawyer beside me, a social worker explaining each line, and my granddaughter's hand in mine. When the case went to court, I didn't sit in the front row like a movie. I didn't glare across the room. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke in a language even smooth liars can't charm. The locks, the notes, the hospital report, the previous complaint, the timeline, the paper trail of caregiver authority turned into a weapon. They called it calculated. They called it predatory. They called it nearly fatal. When the sentence came, I felt no triumph, no fireworks, just a slow settling inside my chest, like dust finally falling after a long storm. Imani told me later, voice quiet. "She tried to say she loved you. She tried to say she was taking care of you." I looked out at the yard where my marigolds still grew stubborn little flames of color. "Love doesn't lock a door," I said. "Now, listen, I'm not going to pretend I walked out of this untouched. I still check locks at night. I still keep water by the bed. Sometimes, when the house creaks, my heart spikes like it remembers the dark. But the shame, that old shame that tells women to stay quiet, to avoid trouble, to swallow fear, so the family looks good, has started to fade, because I know what happened. And someone believed me. And I am still here. Some mornings, I open every cabinet just because I can. I stand in the pantry and look at soup cans like they're proof the world is real. I bake biscuits the way my son liked. And sometimes I cry into the flour because grief doesn't vanish, just learns to sit beside you instead of on top of you. Imani studies at the table in the evenings. Her pencil scratches across paper like a steady heartbeat. And I sit on the porch with tea, watching the sky bruise into purple, the air smelling like grass and distant rain. I think about how close I came to disappearing without a sound. I think about how easily a lie can become a cage when people want it to be convenient. And I think about all the women who have been called confused when what they were was cornered. If you take anything from my story, take this. Your memory is not up for auction. Your age is not a confession of weakness. And if someone tries to shrink your world until it fits inside a locked room, you do not have to prove your sanity by suffering quietly. Sometimes survival isn't loud. Sometimes it's a granddaughter turning a key. Sometimes it's a steady breath returning to your lungs. Sometimes it's simply opening a window and letting the air back in, as if to tell the world softly, firmly, I'm still here. And I remember everything.